From the heart of Montana, this is Big Sky, Small World, Carroll College's student podcast.
Big sky, small world, like a mountain high Montana. Took it to the big sky.
M&amp. It shouldn't work, but it does.
The story about two roommates who shouldn't work, but they do.
Hey guys, welcome back to M&amp. I'm Mila.
And I'm Maria.
And last week we talked about
How we became roommates.
And this week, we're going to talk about each of us have studied abroad in the same place, just very different times and very different experiences.
Exactly. So today, we're going to talk about our study abroad in Galway, Ireland.
Should we give like a little rundown of how long we were there and what we did?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you want to go first? Because yours is
Sure.
shorter.
Cool. All right. So I was in Galway, Ireland this last summer for 3 weeks on a ecology study abroad. And it counted towards the basic ecology class that I need for the biology degree. And it was pretty much just 3 weeks of traveling around County Galway, learning about the ecology, a lot of the rocks, plants, stuff like that. And then that was it.
Yeah. And I did not do a summer. Fall of 2023. I did a whole semester in Galway. So Carroll has a direct exchange program with them. I was able to pay all my Carroll tuition and fees. All I had to do was pay housing over there. And I was able to take a whole semester. I had purposely left room in my schedule to take a lot of distribution requirements. So the big things I needed to knock out while I was there was I need a cultural diversity credit. And
the study abroad doesn't actually count as the cultural diversity.
No.
But that's a different problem.
I have
We have some quabbles about that, but
I got it figured out. I got it pre-approved. And then they changed which one would count as a cultural diversity after I took the classes. But the way they do classes over there is completely different than the way we do classes over here. So that was just like a whole other mess. Kind of a fun mess, but in the moment it was not fun. And then I also did history was another distribution. And I just am genuinely very fascinated by history. And I didn't really have room to take any history classes at my time at Carroll. They never really fit in my schedule. A lot of them are Tuesday, Thursdays. And as a science major, I tend to have lots of labs on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So I did some history classes. I did a Celtic studies class. I did, what else is I in? I did 2 Irish culture classes, and one of them was specifically designed for foreign exchange students. And then I did a marketing class over there. It was just really actually fascinating to see the EU has a very different marketing rules than the United States, of course. And then within that, we used a lot of US company examples, but EU
in a bad
version.
way or a good way?
Kind of both. I learned some really interesting facts about Coca-Cola, the company Coca-Cola.
Interesting.
But yeah, so I did an entire 4 months there and did a lot of traveling while I was over there. Kind of was when else am I going to have very little responsibilities and just be able to travel around Europe and learn a lot about the world. Also preface, I'm not the type of person who had traveled in my life at all before this.
Yeah, well, I went with, Mila went with nobody that she knew. I went with 2 other people that I'm good friends with, and so we all went together. And then after the class ended, one of my friends and I went to Rome for 5 days afterwards. So we traveled a little bit, but not nearly as much as you did.
I had 4-day weekends every weekend. I stayed in Galway for probably about a month's worth of weekends, but the other 2 months worth of weekends I traveled because I don't know if I'm ever going to go back to Europe, quite honestly.
Did you just do bus? Or Uber?
To travel?
Yeah, yeah.
To travel, it kind of depended. When I was traveling within Ireland, I bused because the trains in Galway are the same price or are more expensive than the buses, but they run the same time. The train to Dublin and the bus to Dublin, the bus was £10 cheaper, or not pounds, 10 euros cheaper, but the amount of time it takes is the exact same. So that's what I did mainly when I was within. I also did like a lot of tourist company things
Yeah.
because I was all by myself. So having that guaranteed, like you're on a group bus, they're bringing you the places you are given a meeting point. Like,
Yeah. We did that for Cliffs of Moher. Ugh.
yeah. So when I did Cliffs in Aran Islands on the same tour.
Oh, did you do the boat one?
Yeah, so I did a ferry one. But so I got bused to the ferry. I got ferried over. Then I had like 2 hours on the Aran Islands all by myself. And I could do whatever I want. And I ended up going on like a donkey buggy tour. And then
I know exactly which tour you're talking about. See, we went with the cheaper one. Jack went on the fancy one. But Sarah and I just did a really, it was a pretty cheap one. And it was like they picked us up in Galway on a bus, took us up there, gave us like 2 hours at the cliffs, and then just drove us back. And I mean, like, that's not a ton of time to do a bunch of stuff, but it was also like we didn't have a ton of money, we didn't have a lot of time. I mean, we were exhausted, and so like for what it was good.
See, mine included Aran Islands and the cliffs together.
Yeah. See, and ours didn't, but it was also probably half the price.
I also went on the very last day of the season, so I got really cheap tickets.
Oh yeah,
because the water was awful. And you were there peak season.
We were there peak season, so it was definitely tourist season, to say the least. But it just so happened that the whole 3 weeks that we were there, they were kind of going through like a rainy patch in the middle of the summer, which was super fun. And Ireland is rainy to begin with, but like it was like considerably more rainy than normal. And it just so happened that the day we went to the cliffs, it was like completely blue skies, like it was gorgeous. It was probably the nicest day we had in Ireland the whole time.
My day was pretty good when I went. I had to get up early. I walked myself down to the bus, and it's like everyone else there was like families and or like I sat next to like two girls who had been like they were in their like late 20s, like they were maybe like 29 and like 30, maybe 27-ish, and they were like, "This is so cool that you're just doing this by yourself." And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm just." Like I had done some other tours a little bit earlier in my time with like friends, and what it comes down to is I'm interested in nerdy things.
Yeah. Well, it was kind of different with our stuff because you, for the most part, were doing classwork like in a classroom and stuff. And the ecology trip was 3 credits of like classroom and 3 credits of like lab technically, but really all we did was like we would go in like the first couple days, like we went in and did like lecture, and I use that term very loosely because it was kind of like we're gonna do like a PowerPoint, talk about it a little bit, and then pretty much just go on a bus and just be out in Ireland and like looking at things and then getting out and hiking and stuff. And so like by the end of the week we were pretty tired and had also been like kind of doing touristy things, like not really, it was more scientific touristy things, but like we were seeing a lot of the countryside, if that makes sense.
Yeah, versus I was in lecture, like I was a student there, and University of Galway is a huge commuter school, if you didn't know that. So during the school year, a lot of people go home on the weekends. They don't stay around.
Oh, really?
Like it's basically international students and like maybe 1 or 2 locals will stay around. But it's a huge commuter school. I joined some societies, and whenever we would go to their events, they're like, yeah, we have these events on a Thursday because we're all going home. Like we went to like a Halloween thing that one of the societies are like clubs there. I was in the biomedical society because it kind of had something to do with my major back here, and I just wanted to like meet new people, and it was like really fun. We would meet and like they had talks and movies and pizzas and stuff. But they teamed up with some other to like have a little Halloween event. Like they rented out a little venue in town and had it. And when we went down, they were like, yeah, we had to have it on a Monday or a Thursday because, a Tuesday or Thursday because, so many people go home. They were like, we're all heading home on the weekends.
That's kind of crazy.
I'm like, here we could have a Halloween event for any club on a Friday, and some people might go home, but a lot of people left. Like our dorms would even be empty.
The dorms were super cool though.
They were so cool.
How it kind of works is they call them villages, which is the cutest thing I've ever heard of. But it's like pretty much apartment buildings.
Yeah.
Would you say apartment buildings or like suite style living kind of?
It's definitely apartments, but our idea of an apartment is
different
very American. It's very European apartment style. I'm like, oh, they don't have a dishwasher. That's weird because we have a dishwasher in our American apartment that we live in together.
Yeah.
Their fridge and freezer was about the size of like
It
our
was in
freezer.
the cabinet. It was in the cabinets for me.
We had like a really tiny one, but I also lived with six Americans.
Which village did you live in though?
I lived in Goldcrest, which is not the newest, but it is like nicer than Corrib and more central than the one you lived in, which was nice when I was.
See, I lived in the newest one, which was Dunlin, and it was also like the farthest away from literally everything. And so it was, I would say on average, we probably walked at least 2 miles every day, at least.
Oh, at least.
If we weren't like going downtown, because if we were going downtown, then we're probably talking like 3 or 4 miles. But just to get to class, I think was 0.6 miles.
Yeah, because my walk to class was about like, it usually took me like anywhere from 15 minutes, like 10 to 20 minutes, usually around 15, which we go to a super small school in Montana. Even today when it's super snowy outside.
5 minutes.
5 minutes and I'm walking like on my tiptoes trying not to slip and slide everywhere.
Exactly. So it was kind of hard being in Dunlin to get to class because it was like a 15-minute walk to class. But we also would always go early because we'd stop at the coffee shop and we'd get scones and butter and jam, which if you've never had butter and jam on a scone, you should try it. It's fantastic. And
I have to ask, which coffee shop did you go to?
Oh, I think it was the only one that was open because it was during the summer. So it was like in the main building.
Okay. See, that was my go-to. I had like a break. What
was it called? Do you remember what it was called?
Smokies?
Yes. Yes, Smokies. We would always go to Smokies, and it was just, and sometimes we'd get lunch there too because they had like little lunches and stuff. But we did make our own lunches because we had to be gone. Like we would go on field trips all day, most days, and so we had to bring lunches with us, which was kind of a little bit of a learning curve because like we had to cook everything. So kind of back to what the living situation is like. It was like apartment style living, and they're called villages. And so they're these huge buildings. And then it's like apartment style living, but it's really odd because every person gets their own room and bathroom it's like key card accessible to them. And then we had a shared kitchen that was like a living room and kitchen. And so it was really nice. Like they were super, super nice. They were small, but everything in Europe is way smaller than America, FYI. Except for my room was huge because it was the handicap room, which was really ideal. But it was kind of funny because there's all these like red strings hanging from the ceiling everywhere for like if I fell out of my wheelchair. I do not have a wheelchair, so I just got the luck of the draw. But
I spent some time in the building that Maria lived in because I had a really good friend. Shout out Layla. I miss you. She lived there. We made cinnamon rolls. Your guys' living rooms were a lot bigger than ours.
Yeah.
And
ours were super nice.
You lived with only Carroll people? Or?
I lived with Sarah, who's Carroll people, Rachel, who is Carroll people, and then 2 other girls that one was from, I don't even remember where, and then one was from the Bronx.
Interesting.
And they were both very different, unique individuals. And we didn't really talk to them a ton because we weren't in the same program as them.
Because Rachel was also in a different program than even Sarah.
All 3 of those girls were in a different program completely. And then Sarah and I were the only ones in our program. And their program was also longer than ours. And a little bit more intensive than ours. Because ours was pretty much like all experience based. Like we had to do assignments in the sense of like we had to keep a journal about what we were doing every day, but that was it. And then we had to do a final presentation, and that was it.
Yeah, and I got the real Irish education experience, which is very different. In America, we have things like test and midterms and homework and this and projects and that and blah, 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 blah. And over there, they do not. I had one class that my entire grade was my final.
See, a lot of the girls that were taking the other program that was like the Irish Studies program or whatnot, they did have a lot of homework. They had a lot of essays and a lot of like almost like I want to say kind of busy work, like a lot of reading and stuff that they needed to do. But we didn't have that so much. And so that was kind of nice. But really for the most part, like Ours was all traveling and all doing stuff like that, which I really appreciated because that's just way more entertaining. But it was kind of tough. I remember feeling like this is really simple because I've taken some ecology classes before, and a lot of it was very much the same, and a lot of it was very much kind of simple stuff. Like, we're talking about things like biodiversity. We're talking about things like igneous versus sedimentary rock. You know what I mean? Like, we're talking about some really basic ecological concepts. And so that was kind of like, I remember being frustrated with that, but like also how can you be that mad about like being in Ireland? The one thing I will say that I didn't expect, and this is the silliest thing, why would I not expect this? But I didn't expect the weather to be what it was. Because when you look up like weather in Ireland, or like when you hear about weather in Ireland, you always hear like rain, okay? But then you also hear like temperate, which is, in my opinion, just not true about Ireland. Like, Ireland to me is a very cold place. And
I didn't find it cold, but also
I found it cold. But you also are from Seattle.
I should say Galway and Seattle are what are called sister cities. So they are considered to be very, very similar cities in very, very like different places. And they have a lot of like overlap, like
precipitation wise, they're very, very similar. And I think like maybe altitude wise, my house at home, like not in Montana, is technically below sea level. So I was super used to it because in Galway, you're also technically below sea level. And then also just like structure wise and like life wise, the cities are supposedly similar. Like Seattle, of course, is a big American city, and Galway's what I would consider like a medium big city. And Galway's a little more touristy, especially like in the summer. It's like when we got there, everyone's like, oh, like, are you here for the end of tourist season? We're like, no, we're here for the school year. And everyone's like, oh, yeah, it goes from tourist season to school season to tourist season. And that's how like the Galway economic system works, is that's how they divide it up. Well, it's also a huge art city as well. Yeah. So it's really musical. It's really artistic. Like, I bought a lot of art. I listened to a lot of music there because it's just like everywhere.
And it started as a big coastal, and it had a lot of trade. And Seattle, once again, also big coastal trade. So part of the reason when I was looking at places as I chose Galway is because it reminded me of home. Like, when I was there, I felt more at home there than I ever have in Montana, honestly.
Yeah. And I think that was part of the hard part for me, because humid cold is different than dry cold. And so it's super humid. Like, we're talking, your hair is just not the same. And so, and the other thing is like, we had pretty cheap shampoo too, because we were just like, we're only here for 3 weeks. We'll just buy some cheap shampoo.
I also bought cheap shampoo.
Yeah. Our hair was super frizzy. It was just kind of a mess. And it was like this kind of damp cold most of the time. And then the sun would come out and you'd be like, okay, this is tolerable. And then it would rain again. So it was I found it to be very cold or really hot. It was kind of like I would get really hot, or then I'd be really cold, and it was kind of like there wasn't a great in between. But I don't know. I was kind of shocked by the climate, because I don't know. I heard temperate and I was like, okay, like 55 to 60, and it was 55 to 60, except for it was like wet everywhere. So,
and I can see that being a huge adjustment. I was like, oh.
Yeah.
I had never owned a rain jacket in my life, and everybody was like, you're going to need a rain jacket when you go to Ireland. I wore it like maybe once or twice. Everyone's like, there's so many puddles, there's so much this. And I'm like, this is exactly what I've grown up in my whole life.
Yeah. See, so it was kind of different in that respect.
And I had a friend who studied abroad in Cork at the same time as me from back home. And me and her met up a few times. And she said, yeah, this reminds me of home. When she was in Galway, we were both like, this reminds us of home. And Cork had similar weather patterns. And she was like, the weather's the same, but Galway, there was something about it that was very, very home-like.
Yeah. There was one day when because we also didn't spend, we did spend some time on the coast, but we didn't spend nearly as much time on the coast than I thought, given that it was right there. But like, it's kind of a walk to the coast from the campus.
It's a huge walk. I actually never went.
I did go once. We went to the aquarium. Shout out Galway Aquarium. A really fun time, not gonna lie. It was like €10 to go, and it was honestly a nice aquarium. I really like aquariums, and I go been to a bunch of aquariums around the States, and the Galway Aquarium was nice. It wasn't, but it was nice for what it was. And what was interesting was it had a lot of like openness to the public, because I would say that in the States, like things are more protected and they're more closed off. I personally think it might be because Americans are kind of stupid and would touch things more than they should. If you don't make sure you can't touch it. But like one of the main exhibits in the Galway aquarium was this huge like tank, but it was completely open to the air. Like it was kind of at waist level, and like you could have easily just like put your hand in the water. And the fish would like, the stingrays and stuff would like come up to you and like kind of interact with you. It was really neat. But like obviously you're not supposed to touch anything, so you just didn't. But I don't know if they could have done that in America, because I think people just would touch things.
Yeah.
I think it's a kind of a cultural thing. Like, because they were just more, it was way more freeing and way more open, and like, we just trust that you're not going to do this kind of. And I didn't see people doing that, which was interesting.
Things there are just very open, because even I went to Dublin twice. Once as like I rode the bus and met a friend who's a Carroll alum who's studying in Scotland. He's studying in Scotland, but he has family in Ireland, so he flew into Ireland to visit them when he had a weekend. And I was like, oh, well, I'll bus over and meet you guys. And he's like, yeah. And I spent like the entire day with his extended family. It was actually so much fun in Dublin. And they were very, very kind people and very, very nice. And when we were there, we'll call her the uncle's aunt, or the uncle's wife.
The aunt.
Yeah, the aunt. The aunt was like, you two need to see the museum. And I was like, oh my goodness, I don't know if I budgeted for the museum. Because I also, like, I was there for 4 months. Everything I did was budgeted to a very, very particular point.
Was the museum free?
And we walked in and it was just like the National Art Museum was free. And she was like,
yeah, see, the Galway Museum was also free.
The Galway Museum is free.
And it was cool. I mean, like, you could just go in.
And even,
it was a ball.
Like, even the Cathedral of Galway is free.
Which
is
just walk in.
Not the case. I traveled quite a bit when I was in Europe, and most of the cathedrals there, unless you are actively going to mass, you have to pay to get in, which was a real great encouragement if you're a Catholic to go to daily mass when you're traveling, because you want to go and see every single cathedral you can.
The churches in Europe are phenomenal. Like, just
amazing.
Just nothing like them. The Galway Cathedral is really cool, but we actually went to a different church in Galway every Sunday that we were there, which I really liked.
2 Sundays?
No, we were there for 3.
Okay.
But we went to the cathedral one time, we went to this other one time, and then Sarah and I went to this other one that was like by a bus stop. It was kind of weird. It was like in downtown kind of. But it was really pretty inside. There was no bathroom. I will just put that out there. I was struggling, to say the least, but it's okay.
They have a campus, even though it's a public university. They have a campus cathedral that has daily, during the school year. It has Sunday 9 p.m. mass.
Ooh.
Went to that one a few times, and then I
don't think it was open when we were there because it was summertime.
And then they had daily. It wasn't mass. It was just Eucharist. It was the readings, no homily, and the Eucharist. And
was
that was
it Catholic?
Yeah, it was Catholic.
So it wasn't It wasn't Protestant.
No, it was Irish. It was the readings for the day, no homily, did the Eucharist. Everybody left.
So word and communion.
Yeah, word and communion daily. And then 9.
Nice. I mean, that's quick and easy.
Yeah. It was actually, if you're looking like a dip your toe into a daily mass situation, it took like, I think one day we timed in, it was 6 minutes for everything.
That's crazy.
But there was also like 4 of us there.
Yeah. Well, the only thing that was really open on campus when we were there was obviously like the buildings that we had classes in, but then the pub was open. So at University of Galway, there is a pub on campus. It was so fun. We had such a good time. And the bartenders were also super fun. They were like younger guys, and they had a bunch of events at the pub for us. A bunch of times, like they had like Irish dancing and like how to learn stuff like that. And they also had like just some socials and kind of stuff. And they'd give us free drink tickets and free food tickets and stuff like that.
They do tons of stuff like that in the school year too.
Yeah, it was a good time. And I can't remember the one bartender's name. But then the other bartender, he had curly hair, and we never figured out his name, but we called him Curly. To this day, we call him Curly. So shout out Curly. But the real funny story about Curly is that, so Sarah and I went to mass, one day, and I think it was like an earlier mass because we were going to be gone or something like that. and we both really had to go to the bathroom. And so we were like, okay, well, on our way back to campus, we'll just sneak through the pub, go to the bathroom, and then we can just go through the pub and then keep going to Dunlin, where we live. And so we're walking, and we come in the pub the back way, and the doors were open because it was kind of warm that day. And so we walk in the back way. There's nobody there except for the bartenders. So it's like, I think it was just Curly, or maybe Curly and somebody else. And he's like sitting there, and we walk in and we're like, hey guys. And we just keep walking, and keep in mind, there's nobody in the bar right now. And I don't know why we didn't think like, that's odd, but we just walked right into the bathroom. And then we got done with the bathroom, we came out, and we went to go out the front doors, and they were locked because the pub was closed. And so
was it like the middle of the day?
Yeah, it was like the middle of the day. And so we were like, crap. And so we tried to like open the doors, and they're like automatic doors, right? So we're standing there trying to open these automatic doors, and we're like, oh, this is so embarrassing. And then here comes Curly with the keys, and he's like, hey, and in his cute little Irish accent, he's like, the door's closed, we're closed right now. And we were like, oh, la, 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 we're so sorry. We just came from mass. And here he is, and he's standing here, and he has like his arm over the door, and he's like, oh, you just came from mass, and we're like, yeah. And he's like, well, or I forget exactly what he said, but he said something about like good little Catholic girls or something like that. And we were like, yeah, we are. And then he was like, well, pray for me while you're at it. And we were like, absolutely, sir. And then we just went on our way after he let us out of the closed restaurant. And we giggled the entire way back because it was so hilarious.
See, they had lunches in there and a coffee shop as well. When I was like during the school year, there's a little like lunch bar, so you can get like sandwiches, burgers, like things like that. And then there's also a coffee shop. So we would go in for coffee sometimes if we had classes in Aaron Macmillan. Is that what it was called?
No idea.
Also, all of the buildings, if you didn't know this about Galway, like I didn't, they're in one of the only Irish-speaking first counties. So that school is specifically there. Like a lot of people there speak Irish, and that's why they go there.
You mean Gaelic?
Irish.
What are you talking about?
The language.
It's Gaelic.
Yeah, it's Irish.
No. But I'll figure that out later.
But they speak Irish there.
Okay.
And like that's why people go. Because
cool.
It's like a county. It's a big thing. One of the only schools left in the country that does it.
Interesting.
So that's a fun fact about it. So all the buildings, the names are in Irish first, English second. All around campus. Every single sign, every single bulletin, every single building.
Gaelic first, English second.
We're going to agree to disagree on that one. Because I had some things told to me while I was there.
Anyways.
But yeah. So I enjoyed that place. The bartender there taught me how to say the name of an Irish beer correctly. Because like my last day, or maybe my second to last day there, I guess I had been ordering this drink wrong the entire time.
How embarrassing.
And he said, you know what? I'm going to tell you this because you look American. And I said,
thank you.
I am American. Thank you.
There was only one time that everybody was really nice. There was only one time that I had an issue with a local. And I was at the grocery store. And I like walked in the grocery store. No, I was walking out of the grocery store and I tripped on the rug. Like almost face planted, tripped on the rug. And I was like, oh. Okay, saved. And then I kept walking, but apparently my foot had caught the rug and flipped it over, like the corner of it over. And then some lady that was walking in was like, what are you doing? You're going to make somebody fall, blah, 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 blah. You can't believe you just left that like that. And I was over here like, somebody might fall. I might fall. Dude, I just did fall. And so I like fixed it for her, which I shouldn't have. But it was like, I got yelled at pretty good by some local Irish lady. But next door to that, this is an aside, but next door to the grocery store was this amazing waffle place.
Oh, I love that place.
Yes.
And that's the Tesco. She went to the Tesco. I know that.
Yeah, Tesco.
And it's not like a real Tesco. It's like a fake Tesco. It's called a Tesco Express.
So weird.
And
it's so tiny. It's like a gas station.
It's like a gas station, but they have fresh like groceries because
Yeah.
the real Tesco is another like 20-minute walk in the opposite direction. And this one's like maybe 10 minutes from campus instead.
Yeah, because so the first night we were there, we went to the bar first and did our little thing at the pub, and that was fun. And I drank an entire Guinness the first night I was there. And everybody was like, you're not going to be able to do that. It's a pint of Guinness. And I was like, watch me. And let's just make one thing clear. Drinking Guinness is like drinking a loaf of bread. Like after you drink a pint of Guinness, especially if you're 5'4", you don't want to do anything ever again because you're so full of this like liquid bread. It's just so heavy. And so
But it feels like something you have to do in
it does feel like something you have to do. And actually I would say it is something you have to do. And so I
would also agree with that statement.
I drank an entire pint of Guinness, and then everybody was like, we need to go get groceries. The grocery store is like 2 miles away. And I was like, excuse me, I don't think I can do that. But I did. I walked 2 miles with a full body of Guinness in me, and I was hurting. So when we found the Tesco that was like 10 minutes from campus, godsend.
Life changing. Love that Tesco.
Yes. But the waffle place next to it, super fun, and it's very cute. And there's all this, I'm telling you people, the tea in this country is amazing.
It is.
And
the
there's
Irish
tea everywhere.
breakfast tea is so good.
And there's tea everywhere. You can get tea wherever you go. And it's always fantastic. And they always bring it to you in this like your personal little teapot. And so it's so cute with little teacups. It's amazing. But anyways, we were at this waffle place and the funniest thing was on the menu. There was Obama pancakes.
Well, you know about Obama Plaza, right?
Yes. Okay. So for those of you who don't know, Obama Plaza is a gas station in the middle of Ireland, not close to anything, completely dedicated to Barack Obama.
And it's because they can trace his ancestral like lineage to this one specific town. So they have an entire gas station dedicated to him. And they have a
statue
of Obama themed things
at
all
the gas
around
station. It's
Ireland,
it's so
actually.
ridiculous. We never went to it. We wanted to, but it's kind of in an obscure place. So we were like, we're not going to make a whole trip.
You have to like rent a car to actually get there. And because we
Yeah.
looked into it too, a few of us, and we were like, there's no way we're going to be able to get there because we
Yeah.
weren't going to rent a car.
Yeah, no. But the thing is that there was kind of a weird obsession with American presidents in Ireland because
Well, specifically Galway, because they have the whole
Yes,
JFK
they
thing.
have the whole JFK thing. So in Galway, there's like a park dedicated to JFK. There's a bunch of other things dedicated to JFK.
The cathedral has a section dedicated to JFK.
Okay, so in the cathedral, there's this huge mosaic of the resurrected Christ. And next to the mosaic of the resurrected Christ, there's a mosaic of JFK praying to the mosaic of the resurrected Christ. It's hilarious. And then we were in, I'm going to forget the name of the restaurant, but it was one of the Irish restaurants downtown. And there was a picture of the royal not the royal family, but the Holy Family. So Mary, Jesus, and Joseph. And then right under that was an inscription that said JFK. And we were like,
Yeah.
what?
JFK visited Galway one time and they've like,
And he was also Irish Catholic.
yeah.
So they really went to town on that. And then when we asked the people when we asked our professor and some of the people who were assisting her in our class, we're like, hey, what's with the whole JFK thing? They looked at us like we were nuts. They're like, what do you mean? We don't do JFK. We don't care about American politics. And we were like, obviously you do though. So it was kind of funny.
But it was fascinating when I was there. I was taking all these history courses, and I guess one of my history professors was like a big Irish person in one of the Irish political parties that I still don't really understand. And he was like a big name for them. And like he was obviously a good scholar because our textbook for the class he had wrote, and it was like a nationally used textbook on, I took a class specifically on like 1500s Ireland because I love like 1500s history. It's like my favorite thing in the world. And it was amazing. Highly suggest.
Yeah.
But a lot of like all of my roommates were in that class. They went the first day, decided it was too much work, and dropped it right away.
The professors were super cool. Like our professor, get this. She was getting her doctorate in hedgehogs. She was going to be a doctor of hedgehogs. Isn't that fantastic?
I just like, I don't
So
even
fantastic.
know what to say for most of it. I will say,
Elaine, doctor of hedgehogs.
I had a professor, and in the history classes, you have these things called tutorials. So you have your big lecture where you take all your little notes, and then you have a mini group that you sign up for separately that meets once a week or once every other week. And there's like maybe 5 of you. And so I was the only American in my tutorial. And this was pre-industrial European pop culture class was what this history class was.
Lord.
And so we were talking about like stoning people to death and like the death penalty. And they're like, yeah, blah, 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 blah. And our professor stops us and he's like, oh my gosh, you're American. Do you have the death penalty? He's like, America still has it, right? And I had to explain to him
Some states do.
that the state I am born and raised in and
Does
where
not.
like my home does not, but the state I go to school in does.
I
And
thought that we got rid of that in Montana.
no, Montana still has the death penalty, but Washington doesn't. As
thought
of fall of
Yeah,
2023.
okay. I don't remember.
And he like, we went on a whole side tangent about the death penalty and they just had me talk about like American things. And I'm like, you guys, I'm so confused why you guys don't have different rules in different places here. They're like, yeah, it's kind of all pretty standardized.
They do kind of do that. What was interesting, kind of along those same lines, is we were talking about some stuff because we did some stuff where we had to like catch mice. So we caught all these mice and we did a bunch of different things like that. And talked about animals and all these different things. And somehow it came up like sticky traps. So like sticky glue traps for like mice and stuff. And that came up and they were like something or other, like, no, we can't import that here. Like you can't buy a sticky glue trap in Ireland. Because they can't import it into the country. And we were like, oh, really? So does that have to do with the fact that there's like a lot of chemicals in the glue and stuff? Like, is it just really bad for the environment? And they kind of looked at us all shocked and they were like, no, it's because it's inhumane. And we were like, oh, yeah, for sure. Sorry about that. And so they just really, I wouldn't say that's softer, but in a way it's more conscious of life, I would say.
But it's also so weird there because things like catching mice in the US, you would have to get so many permits for.
Nah, you can catch mice.
Not for scientific purposes. For scientific purposes, you would have to be going under like IRB, things like that.
We were just tagging them though. We weren't doing experiments on them.
Even like the ones that the Carroll people tag, like they have to do a bunch of like
And
national
maybe
government
they
stuff.
might have already done permits and stuff for us because we were just watching mice populations is all we were doing.
Yeah. But like it's also very interesting there. I know you didn't really get to experience this, but
Okay.
no, okay. You guys were all exchange students basically, right? It wasn't a ton of
Yeah, that's true.
people there. They study their courses. Carroll is a liberal arts school, so we specifically have to take things
Yeah.
outside of the
We
sciences.
talked to them about that a little bit and they were really like, what? That doesn't make sense.
So one of my really good friends that I made while I was there, I was taking a lot of history. So they were like, oh, are you a history? Like, what's your course is what they would call it. And they were like, oh, do you study history? And I'm like, no, I study biochemistry. And then I would go to like the biomed soc and they would be like, but like what sciences are you in right now? And I'm like, oh, I'm taking a little break. I'm getting like my distributions done. And they were like, what are
don't
you
understand.
talking about? And I'm like, well, like I need to take history classes and this classes and that classes to like have my well-rounded education. And they were like,
No.
no,
they
you
just-
take science and that's all you do. And I'm like, no. And my friend in history, she was like, why are you in this class? Like, this makes no sense. I was
Yeah, it
taking
was
like
definitely different. Like the education system as a whole is definitely different.
it's completely different because they do like their levels and they don't know where they're going to school till like a month before. And
I don't know. There was some pros and some cons to it. I remember talking to some of them and they were like, yeah, I kind of like the idea of how you're doing it. And then there's some parts of me that kind of liked the way they were doing it. So it's kind of give and take. Like, I don't think that either system is perfect, but
Oh, not at all. But it was just fascinating because they were like, what do you mean? I was like, yeah, I'm signing up for my classes and I really want to get into this theology class. And they're like, but you're a science major. I'm
Yeah.
like,
yeah, it's definitely different. And
yeah. And explaining to my little 5-person like meeting class that I was a science major, their minds were also blown because these were people who were like applying to get their PhDs in history because this was like a last year history class. And they're like, yeah, I'm trying to get my PhD and become a doctorate of this, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, yeah, I studied biochem.
Yeah, you could be a doctor of hedgehogs. You can do whatever you want.
Do whatever you want.
There was also a really cool professor who was the entomologist, which is the study of bugs, pretty much. Fascinating man. And he was kind of a stickler kind of guy. Like, he was kind of prickly. Like, he didn't like a lot of students. And so, but he took an extreme liking to me, which was pretty hilarious because I'm also really into bugs. Like, I'll do bugs all day. And
you're weird.
He was so impressed with me on all these different things. He thought I was hilarious, which was so funny. And like the student that was with us from Galway, she was all like, he never likes anybody. Like, you're so lucky. Like, you know, and this man was having me like dispatch things because he was like, we caught a bunch of moths and then we killed them and then we pinned them and like did stuff with them. Okay, again, ecology class. And I was like one of the only people that was like pinning these bugs, and like one of them was like half alive kind of. I was just like, whatever, we're going. And he just thought it was hilarious. And so he thought it was so funny that he made me open up oysters to feed to these fish.
Ew.
Yeah, he was like, you can do this. You can kill bugs. You open and kill the oyster and give it to the fish. And I was like, okay, sir. He just got a kick out of me. He would like giggle and laugh and make me say funny things. And I was like, okay.
Was your class taught by one person the whole time? That was another thing. That like, here classes are taught by one person for the entire semester. There, I had 3 classes that were taught by one professor. And then I had one class that was split between 3 different professors.
Yeah, we had our class kind of was split. It was the main gal most of the time, but then there was a bunch of other people that would take us on different things. So like there was a rock gal. So the geologist came and did a whole day with us, and then there was like a couple other ladies that did different presentations and took us on different trips and stuff. So it was kind of a mix, but it was always the main gal who was usually with us, but then it was like kind of co-taught by other people too.
So one of my classes was specifically for students who were studying abroad. Like all of us were study abroad students in Galway, Ireland at the time. And so what was it? Oh, it started with this one guy, and it was an Irish culture class. And there was 3 units. There was a dance unit, a music unit, and a literature unit.
Dance.
And so one of it was, the first unit was just traditional Irish music. Like that's all it was. And it was one guy taught that. And then the next unit was traditional Irish dance. Another person taught that. The last unit.
Yeah, there was like different units and they were taught by different people. Yep.
But we didn't have like a consistent person. And then another Celtic studies course I taught, it was history of the early Celts. The first half was taught by one guy. And then when we got to a certain point, it switched over to this girl. And like, she was like, I don't even know where he left off. Like they hadn't communicated at all. We were just doing random different things. And I was like, I get that they had a point of like, oh, this is where my expertise ends. I'm handing you off to this next person. But it was really funny because he was a British dude who taught it.
Yeah. And there was, the geologist was Italian.
Yeah. And then my marketing professor was Russian.
Yeah. It was a very much a mix of a bunch of different stuff. But I loved my time there. I think about it very often, like when stuff gets really stressful over here, during class or even just like in general, I just like look out the window and pretend that I'm back in Ireland. It's kind of nostalgic.
I had a great time. I will say I was there long enough that when it was time to go home, I was ready to go home.
You know, honestly, but I'm kind of a homebody. Being there for 3 weeks, after the 3 weeks, I remember being like, I think it's time to go. So
yeah, my 4 months.
Yeah,
I
can't imagine.
It was starting. I'm not the type of person who usually gets homesick, but like,
see, but I also go home pretty frequently, and so not. And then when we did the next week in Rome, so we were gone for a collective like whole month, and that was tough because by the time that it was time to come home, like it was definitely time to come home.
And for me, I had lived in Helena the summer before, and I had the year 2023. From January to December, I had only spent a little under a week and a half in Helena. I had seen my mom, in Seattle. I had seen my mom a few times because I had met her in Oregon where my grandparents were living at the time. And I had seen her through that. But it was very much like I didn't go to my actual home for a long, long time. And that was really, especially towards the end when we were getting to December. I have a December birthday and I remember my birthday passing and I realized the whole year of 2023, I had spent less than 3 days or 4 days in Seattle because I drove home one day. I flew out 3 days later, maybe 4 days.
So, I mean, it was a good experience, but it definitely, you do get homesick. And the time difference is pretty crazy too. So it's like, it's even kind of difficult to talk to people back home because the time difference is just so whack.
We have a good friend, Sophia, and it was her birthday. And I was up at like a very, very early hour. And I said, oh my goodness, happy birthday to her. And she's like, what are you talking about? My birthday's not for like another 7 hours. And I'm like, no, it's your birthday. I'm in London right now. It's your birthday here.
That happened to me a couple times too.
I was like, I'm happy to be the first one to wish you happy birthday. And then like my family, because I turned 21 while I was over there, we actually went to the waffle place because they were the only place that sold iced coffee. A lot of places.
Iced coffee is not a big thing over there, that's for sure.
And if you know me, you know
ice. Ice is also not a big thing.
Ice is not there. I'm a huge ice girl.
I was not. I'm not, so I was fine.
I'm a huge iced coffee girl. Like iced coffee is my favorite thing in the world. So I was like, you guys, we're getting brunch and I'm getting myself an iced vanilla latte with oat milk. But also like Europe doesn't have black like drip coffee either.
Yeah, they do. I got drip a few times.
I couldn't find anywhere that had drip. There was places that had Americanos, but not real drip coffee.
Oh, I have no idea then.
I think you were probably having Americanos, but I like was traveling. I did a solo trip to Poland and I did everything there by myself. Got hugged by an old Polish lady at mass one time. And I think she was saying something about like the youth and being Catholic and good to see you. And I was like, uh-huh.
I had a conversation about U.S. politics with a German lady on a plane. This was also the time of pre-election too, so it was pretty crazy. We were getting a bunch of...
Yeah, it was... I was definitely there during an interesting time, and I was just like, it's interesting to see the world
through other people's eyes.
And when I was there was some big like world conflicts happening, and seeing what those world conflicts looked like in the news we were getting in Galway was very different than the news you were getting in America about those world conflicts.
Yeah, it was just really interesting. I really liked it. To be honest with you, I can see myself, I could see myself living there. Like, I really loved it. And it was close enough to America-ish. Like, it wasn't America, but it was, like, people spoke English. That was pretty common. You didn't feel super like, oh, I'm definitely not in America. There was moments that you were like, I'm definitely not in America, but it didn't feel like, oh, this is super strange like it did in Italy, because Italy was definitely not America.
Yeah, and the other big thing is we were in Western Ireland. We were on the West Coast.
Yes.
And that is like what they call real Ireland. Western Irish culture is very different than Eastern Irish culture. Like Dublin Dublin's considered Americans basically. When we were in London, it was just like America. They had a Slim Chickens in London. Like that felt American. Dublin felt super American besides like the old churches. Like it felt American. The West Coast felt close to home, and it was because my sister's city, like I felt homey there. But it definitely was more Irish there than other parts.
I wouldn't say that it felt American, because I would say everything in Europe is just like 10 times more beautiful than it is in America. It was like every street was just gorgeous. This was just prettier. Like you got back to America and you're just like, 7-Eleven looks horrible. You know what I mean? So,
you know where has really good 7-Elevens? Copenhagen. We lived off of Copenhagen.
Well, yeah, but everything's just prettier. That's my point.
I don't know.
Everything is prettier.
It just felt...
Everything is older. The streets are cooler.
Everything is older and narrower. I'll say that. Like, the streets are narrow.
It doesn't look ugly like American cities, though. That's the thing.
No, but London's kind of ugly. Dublin was a little prettier, but it's like, I will say I've been to the top of the Space Needle, and I went to the top of, there's like a sky deck if you go to the Guinness factory.
Mm-hmm.
And it looked a little older, but it didn't look that much different. Like, it reminded me of home.
From a sky view, but like when you're out on the streets, like it's just, there's little rivers and stuff going through. There's flowers everywhere. It's just, I personally found it to be much prettier than the U.S.
I think it's also very different from Montana, which you've grown up in your whole life. And that's the bigger thing about it. It's like, man, there's a river, there's a rocky beach. I have a rocky beach at home.
It's prettier than Seattle, okay?
I don't know. You haven't been to some of the beaches I've been to.
I'm not talking about beaches. I'm talking about like the city itself.
Oh, yeah. The city of Seattle is gross, though.
That's what I'm saying.
Galway has
gross moments because it's a city, but it's also just like prettier.
And it's like, I will say, when Seattle has been in its prime, like walking the Pier of Galway felt very similar to walking like the Pier of Seattle. And we went to a seafood festival there in Galway, and I was like, oh, this reminds me of home, like going and getting fish and chips and stuff.
Yeah, but it was a great experience. Very beautiful. I loved every second of it. I want to go back. So
I feel like I've done everything I need to do in Ireland. I think if I were to go back, I could have spent more time in Cork. I really enjoyed Cork.
Yeah, I'd go to Cork. I never went, but
I went to Cork. I really want to go. I never went to Northern Ireland, which is kind of a regret of mine. I never went to Belfast or anything like that, which is technically a different country.
Yeah, I'd like to go back, but
I do like, if you're ever flying to Ireland, fly, if you can, get a layover on your way back. Get a layover in the United States if you have to have one, because you can go through customs in Ireland for the U.S.
Yeah,
and
my flight stuff
so
got
nice.
really messed up, so I did not have that. But
I had a direct flight, and it was so nice to go through U.S. customs. And like, I was just able to get off the plane and not worry about it when I got back, because I had already gone through all the customs. They were like, why are you coming back to the U.S.? I'm like, I live there and I was studying abroad. Please let me come back home. But overall, 10 out of 10 experience. If you're thinking about studying abroad,
do it.
100% do it. Talk to me or Maria if you're a Carroll student, because we can both tell you our experiences. And if you give me the opportunity, as you guys have learned today, I will not close my mouth about it, like, at all.
That is so true. Okay, well, we better get going, because we'll see you again next week.
M&amp, 2 roommates who shouldn't work, but they do.
Big sky, small world, like an high mountain alone. Took her to the big sky.
Thank you for tuning in to Big Sky, Small World. The music is by Alex Coulter. Please follow and leave comments on Instagram at bigsky.smallworld. Tune in next week.
Took her to the big sky.
Big Sky, Small World is sponsored by the Carroll College Communications Center, helping the Carroll and Helena communities with presentations, multimedia, and podcasting since 2020. Find us in the library or email Director Alan Hansen at ahansen@carroll.edu.